Assalamu alaikum. Is it okay if I stand up?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just because I'm sitting at the back and it's a little bit hard to see. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we've mentioned, my name is Manal Younis, and I've grown up my whole life, nearly my whole life in Australia since I was 3 years old. But my dad has always taught me a lot about Eritrea and what's happening in Eritrea. And I've been hearing stories about our family for many, many years. And when I heard that this was happening, I was very interested in seeing what the discussion would be, because in my own family, we have my first cousin who 19 years ago, he disappeared. And everybody in our family is still waiting for him to come back. Nobody knows if he's alive or dead. Nobody knows if he's still imprisoned. Nobody knows anything because no one's had communication. And I recently visited my auntie, his mother, and his siblings, his brothers and sisters in Europe, in Sweden. And it was very heartbreaking to hear them still saying, when Mahmoud comes back, inshallah, when Mahmoud comes back, this is going to happen, this is what we're going to do. And that's a reality for so many Eritreans. And most of us do know the numbers, that there are over 10,000 people locked up. People debate the numbers, but if it's over 10,000, that's already an incredible amount, and that's not okay. And I think it's brilliant that we are doing something to acknowledge this. Yes, I've got one poem that I actually wrote a long time ago, and it was for a campaign by Amnesty International that was called Forgotten Prisoners, and it was acknowledging people who were locked up under political regimes all around the world. And when I wrote this poem, I imagined that I was speaking to a woman who was locked up in Eritrea, and this is how I imagined that the conversation would go. Also, I'd like to acknowledge that we stand on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. I think that anytime we talk about issues that affect us as people who have come from colonized backgrounds, and a lot of our problems are because of that, we need to acknowledge where we stand and that we're also part of something here, something bigger that we also need to be talking about. So this is the poem. They tried to silence us, she said. They curtain their dirt, make certain the hurt is felt by us and not them. But what could they be trying to achieve? They oppress those they should protect, promote those they should suspect. They've retarded systems but jump-started the spread of fiction that hinders their brothers. They see only their own prospects and fit their ideal world into a narrow vignette. And I don't know if they have their heads caught in the clouds or buried in the ground. She sat behind the iron bars, shadows of the bars on her face. She whispers, and I listen. Her voice talks of how we have been lied to. We are told to dream big, but to stay within the confines of these carefully designed lines. We shoot arrows into distances we cannot reach because it holds us back. It stiffens our limbs, kicks us in the shins, tells us we can't win, but no more. We will shed that layer of fear and leave it behind us. This is the most dangerous thing known to man. This is what has kept us from our destinies, left us powerless and begging on our knees, but we will no longer be afraid. So they can no longer use our fears as chains. But our voices were given to us, and they are not for others to take or to silence. We will not be quiet despite their violence. We must remember those who died, lived, and still live so that we know what is possible. Freedom is possible. Freedom possible. She placed her head in her hands and began to whisper to herself now, as if to convince herself now, but there is so little she can do now. And I know that it's up to me, for I am still free. But I cannot continue to be free knowing what I know, so I will use the only weapon that I have, the one taken from her. My voice will be her voice, These words written by my soul, driven by her stories and heard by anyone who will listen. If we listen, we take their power. If we fight with our voices, then they have already lost. Listen. She's whispering for anyone who will listen. I'll just finish by also acknowledging how powerful it was listening to the story that was shared earlier. I can't speak Arabic, unfortunately. I can understand a little bit, but I could still really feel that the emotion and the power in that. And I think that the more that we talk of these stories, and the more aware that we are, that our communities are, that the world is about this issue, because it's an international issue. It's something that that many people are facing. And the more that we speak about it, the better. And that's how we gain power, because at the moment there's really no other way. So Jazakallah khair very much for putting this on. Jazakallah khair for having these.